Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this Operational Services Committee. If there is a fire drill, if their fire bell goes off, there is not a fire drill, so you will need to exit through the various exits, please. Now we'll move on to agenda item number 1, which is public question time. We have no public questions, so I will now move on to apologies and substitutions.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to let you know, there has been a change to the substitution arrangements for this committee, and Councillor Caroline Shepherd has been put as a substitute in replacement of Councillor Lorna Dupre. And then moving on to the apologies, Councillor Shepherd is substituting for Councillor Wade, who sent her apologies, and Councillor Kane is substituting for Councillor Holtzman, who sent her apologies.
Thank you, Tracy. Welcome to you both. Move on to declarations of interests. Does any member have any declarations of interest? Thank you very much. Do you have any comments, excuse me, about the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of January, or am I allowed to sign those as a true record after the end of the meeting? Thank you very much. I just have a couple of chairman's announcements. I would like to welcome Paul Remington and Nigel Ankers from ECSS firstly. And some very good news is that the council has been successful in securing £134,710 from the Sport England Swimming Pool Support Fund to improve energy efficiency in our local pools. The funding will go towards a solar panel project at the Hive and provide the Bottisham pool with a replacement boiler and triple glazing in the pool hall windows. Very well done to the team that applied for that. I also have 2 member seminars to remind members of. The domestic abuse seminar on the 25th of April via Teams at 6 o'clock, and also the ECSS and the ESTC shareholder seminar on the 9th of May. This date has changed from the 16th of May. This will also be via Teams at 6 o'clock. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item number 6, which is the VCAEC update from Angela Haylock. Welcome, Angela. That's my bit for today, so I did anyway. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me again. It don't seem 5 minutes since the last time I was here, actually. So here we go again. I'd also like to thank you for agreeing to fund us for another 2 more years. So thank you very much for that. Can I just ask, though, why the figure of 19,928 is the same as it was in 2015? That's one of my main questions. So whether you know the answer to that or whether it needs to go back to the officers, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can come back to that.
Okay, thank you. Because obviously that's, stayed the same for 9 years. It's quite a long time to cope with that sort of funding cut. Okay, so moving on to my presentation. So this is for what we've currently got, so November to January. I've just pressed the button on the go button before I left for the February figures, so I can give you some of those. But this is what we've got up to now. So the car scheme, so our lovely car scheme with the lovely Margaret there. That's our Margaret. She's my poster girl for this year. We have targets. So what we provide you with is targets, which is 100% of what we deliver as an organisation. So they're in the blue, and then the purple are what we've actually achieved against those targets. So we have there the journeys undertaken. So we're more or less at where we should be, obviously, given that this is just on January for the time being. We have the miles driven, which are slightly less than they should be at this particular point. What I would sort of caveat with that is that we are struggling, as I mentioned at the last committee, with getting volunteers. So we are going to be doing a campaign
for gardeners this weekend because it's a popular weekend, Easter weekend. But then I'll start doing more campaigns around for our volunteer drivers. So it could be lack of drivers. We've got, well, at the moment, we've only got 22 actual drivers at the moment. We have got a couple of drivers who have been diagnosed with serious illnesses, so obviously they can't drive. We have a driver whose husband has passed away, so obviously she's not driving. So there's all sorts of impacts at the moment. We do have one new driver that I'm getting DBS checks on, so hopefully he will come online very shortly. The other impact is that I've not been able to recruit an administrator, which I think I mentioned at the last meeting. So at the moment, I've only got someone on a Monday and a Tuesday. So the Wednesday, Thursday, I try and answer the phone if I can. Obviously, it's multitasking and all the rest of it. Good news is that I've actually managed to get some funding from Cambridgeshire County Council. So they're funding a paid position. So for Wednesdays and Thursdays, 12 hours a week. And it's a 3-year funded post, which is brilliant. So hopefully we can then move things on. I'll have an administrator who can then obviously promote what we're doing, etc., etc. So that's for that. Hours provided is probably just under where we should be. But again, obviously, if I haven't got the drivers, obviously I can't provide the hours. But we're there or thereabouts. There's not, it's not drastic figures that we're talking about here. Okay. Sorry, I've got croaks on as yourself. So the volunteer centre, so what do we do? Obviously, we try and promote volunteering throughout East Cambridgeshire. We try and get organisations to promote their roles on our website. We promote what they do in our newsletters. We do that coordination thing around, what people want, what people need, etc., etc. We're finding more and more people aren't coming into the office. They aren't phoning the office. They're actually applying online. They're going direct to organisations, or they're seeing something we advertise on our website and they're then clicking on the link, which then takes them direct to that other person's website. So we can't guarantee the numbers. We can't guarantee that we're going to get 100% of the numbers because we don't know what we don't know. If someone doesn't tell us they've got someone's been recruited. I think about a month ago, someone popped in, oh, hello, I'm so-and-so, just to say, we got someone from that recruitment campaign. Oh, lovely. Now, when was that? Oh, that was about 6 months ago, but I kept meaning to pop in. So we've had this ad on our website for 6 months that didn't need to be there, so it's hey-ho. Because the only reason she popped in because she had some new people applying. Oh, applying? Well, because it's on the volunteer website. Oh, well, we should take that down, shouldn't we? Yes. We're only as good as the people we serve, eh? Gardening scheme then. Managed to get a nice jolly photo for a change. They don't like their photos being taken, my gardeners. So that's with the shredder that we had some funding for, I'm trying to think now, just before COVID or something, there or thereabouts. So for a shredder, so we can now go into people's gardens, we can shred whatever it is they have. We can put it back on their garden if they wish, or we can take the stuff away with us. So it saves a lot of time and energy, because one of the things that we find is obviously it's hard to get rid of garden rubbish. We do have an arrangement with G's, so we can take our garden rubbish to them and they use it as composting. But we can't take, bricks or whatever away with us. You'll notice on there, though, that I'm afraid that the hours are well below where they should be. And I've been trying to put my head round the figure that we have there. So for the large blue box, that is 4,080 hours. It's a lot of hours. And I've been trying to work out what that, how someone has got to that figure. Even if I have 4 volunteers in 4 days a week, for 48 weeks a year, it's not going to reach that figure. So it's something that I need to obviously discuss with Lewis in my next meeting. I've tried to rack my brains how the person's come to that figure and I just can't figure it out. So that will need to be negotiated. But the hours that we have supplied, is really great. Considering the van was off the road for 6 weeks in July, August, and then for another 2 weeks in September. So we weren't able to do anything. Obviously, it's been extremely wet this winter. So we've not been able to get out on several days. And we've had a change of staff as well. So there's been lots of changes, but the positive side of that is that we now have one person doing that role. He's really, really good. He's got the engagement from the volunteers, etc. We're really busy now, as you would expect this time of year. Tasks are definitely on target. We're probably going to go over those. So the amount of jobs we're actually doing is where it should be. Sorry. So what we call our CVS functions, this is where we help members of the public, so members in voluntary groups, members in charities. So we have statistics there where we need to provide training sessions. So we've provided the training that's required of us. We've provided the numbers of newsletters that are required of us, which is one a month. They go out around the 15th of the month. Partnership meetings attended. Oh, I think I've gone over a bit on that one. Seem to always be in a meeting. Seems to see familiar faces over there somewhere, quite a few faces at these various meetings. But my role is to attend meetings on behalf of the voluntary sector. So if there's something that maybe someone's saying, oh, we need the voluntary sector to know this, I will then post out that information on their behalf. So it doesn't mean that the 20 people from voluntary organisations go to that same meeting. And funding assistance. My role is to help groups. So if they're looking for funding, I will do a funding search for them. We don't have direct access to a database, but we can use the one that Support CAMS uses. So I would do that for them and look through the information and see if it's suitable for them. Slightly down on where I should be at this particular moment in time. And in the last 4 months, no one has approached me for assistance at all, which is very scary. But it's that time of year, it's when you're thinking, oh, what we're going to do next year and, you know, sort of thing. So it's usually sort of April, May, things start to build up a bit more. In the office, so this is actually a new statistic that was brought in 2022 when we started this particular agreement. So it was a bit of a guess, deciding how many volunteer hours are in the office. So when we say office, we mean admin staff that work in the office, but we also talk about our trustees as well. We have been diligently counting those hours. Someone comes in, who are you? What are you doing here? Come on, put your time. It's been a bit like that. But actually, I think we're obviously not going to hit that target. It just needs adjusting slightly. But we're there or thereabouts with regards to that. And then how much have we as volunteers given back? Throughout the volunteer centre, so my drivers, my gardeners, my trustees, my office volunteers, I have about 42 volunteers. Love them to death. They were brilliant. I mean, you know, giving their time for free. So 6,117 hours of their own time in the last 10 months. And if you're using the sanctuary figure of £14.05p, strange figure, but hey ho, it equates to 85,943.85. Don't forget the 85 pence. So this is how much they brought into the local economy. So that is my slides that I've handed in today. I've just got a couple of questions, Madam Chair, if I may. So the meeting on the 31st of January, CAB West Suffolk received a funding agreement for 3 years. Can I ask why they got a 3-year agreement when we got a 2-year agreement?
If we can,
yes,
if you want to ask the questions, then we'll make sure you receive the answers in writing. Do CAB West Suffolk have to present to this meeting the same as myself? Because I've never seen them on an agenda, that's all. Yeah, thank you. So that's my question. Sorry, it was just 2 that were, you know, from the meeting the other day. I thought, oh, what's that? No, that's absolutely fine, but you'll get a written answer to
Super,
that's
thank you.
okay.
So has anyone got any questions?
Councillor Inskip.
Yes, a few. Just going back to that first chart with the volunteers. Can the driving one? Yeah. Can you actually sort of say what the numbers are for, let's say, the targets and the journeys undertaken and the hours, because it's a bit difficult to read given the miles number there. And related to that is do you have data for previous years or not?
Yes, I have data for previous years. Obviously, the presentations that were given here, but I can quite easily find previous years. The targets that are in here have been the targets for several years, from my recollection. But I can, if there's particular years you're looking for, then obviously I can find those for you.
I was really just trying to understand if there's a trend in terms of, obviously of falling short this year. Has that been the same in previous years, or is it things getting worse or better? Is that something you can sort of give a guidance on without?
So during COVID, obviously it gone down quite steeply. So if I went back 5 years, would that be? How far would you like me to go back? I can obviously send you information.
Yeah, 5 years is more than enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the last 2 or 3, just to understand.
Oh, that brings it a bit quicker. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 years.
Yeah, and could you give me, the other question was about the numbers that are on.
Yeah. I thought they'd come up when on my computer in the office. Obviously, they come up and they don't come up because it's a PowerPoint, isn't it? I'll have to give it out.
Perhaps you could let councillor
Yeah.
speak. Does anybody else want that information? If Angela could forward it on to, perhaps you could circulate it to all members of the committee, Andrew, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be
Will
very
do.
useful.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
And one last question. You said you talk about people approaching you for assistance. You haven't had much recently. How do you, let's say, make people aware of that? How is that sort of service sort of publicised?
So generally it's our members. So we have around 129 off the top of my head members. So we send out a newsletter once a month that goes out to them. And in there we say, if you want any funding assistance, then obviously please contact us. We send out any funding pots that we know of, Twitter and Facebook, etc.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions for Angela? I just want to say, as I always do, oh, beg your pardon, sorry. So you're waving at me, I'm not looking, so do beg your pardon.
Yeah, sorry, it was a couple of questions about finance, please. What I don't understand is I assume you volunteer drivers are paid for their petrol, yeah? And how about the service users? Do they make a financial contribution or a donation or what, please?
Okay, so the car scheme works by, we use the HMRC guidance rates. So when the driver's in the car on their own, it's 45p a mile. Once the passenger or passengers, it's 5p per passenger. So that journey is obviously there and back. And the client pays the driver directly that mileage money. We also now ask for a booking fee. So we ask for £1 booking fee, and that goes towards our overheads. We charge a minimum fee of £7. So that basically covers about 13, just over 13 miles. But obviously our most frequent journey is to Addenbrooke's, which you're looking at about £20, £25.
Thank you. How about the garden scheme, please?
Okay, at the moment, we don't have any direct funding to offer free gardens. So we did have some money from Sanctuary Housing, and we did have some money from the Ely of City a couple of years ago. So we could offer certain people free gardens. So what we do is we ask for a donation. So we suggest £25 an hour, but on average, we do have 3 volunteers and a supervisor in that garden. So whatever it is won't take as long as it should do. And then obviously that money comes in and that pays for, say, our overheads and the supervisor's wages. Okay.
Any other questions for Angela? But I think I can just say on behalf of the whole committee, thank you very much for your efforts, and somebody will get back to you with the answers to those 2 questions. Thank you very much for attending yet again. And you're right, it does only seem like 5 minutes since you were here last.
Chair, before we continue, could I ask that the questions are circulated to this side of the room, please? Thank you.
The submitted questions.
The pre-submitted questions.
Yes, sorry.
please. Thank you.
Pass them. Have we got any more copies? Sorry. Right, now move on to agenda item number 7, which is the service delivery plans for 24-25, and I'll hand over to Isabel to present this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I'm pleased to present the service delivery plans and end of year reports for 24-25. There have been a few changes within the plans looking forward. So we've really tried to focus in on some of the key project policies and strategies rather than provide all of our statutory reporting, although that is in there, it is still relevant for some of the areas. They've been updated to reflect the corporate plan themes where possible. And like I say, the KPIs are more focused around that as well. And then included here is the end of year reports, which is a look back and contains a narrative on any variance, either overperformance or underperformance against the plan's KPIs. So members are requested to approve the plans listed in A to J. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. I'm happy to, we've got a recommendation to approve the service delivery plans and to note the end of year performance. So I'm happy to propose the first one, which is 2.1. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, happy to second.
Thank you very much. That's Alan to second. We have had various questions submitted by members of the committee. Does anybody have any questions for clarification on the responses that they've received? Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few. Do you want me to take them one at a time?
Are these points of clarification?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, please.
My question was how the building control manager and management accountant can ensure a break-even budget. And the answer is that it's not possible for them to ensure it. So I wonder why that's in there as a performance target.
Really, Chair?
Yes, thank you.
It's there as a performance target because it's generally based on the previous year's performance. So what we've achieved budget wise, income wise in the previous year, we hope to achieve again. And it is a target for them to focus on in terms of looking at additional income from other streams, which they have actually done this year as well. So we have topped up where we've had a loss in fees because there's been a downturn in applications. We have seen an increase in other chargeable work as well. So that's why the target exists.
I still wonder why we have a target that they're to ensure it when they've accepted that that's not possible, but I'll leave that. Just to say, I'm pleased that we're going to have quality items in the new Sustainable Communities performance. I noticed that I asked the evidence that only 14 people were unable to vote due to not having voter ID. And the answer is it's the number of people who were reported to have been turned away. But that doesn't actually represent the number of people who weren't able to vote, because quite a few would simply have known they couldn't vote because they didn't have the necessary data. So that needs rephrasing.
I struggle to understand how do you want to rephrase your question? Is that what you're asking?
No, there was a categoric statement that only 14 people were unable to vote due to not having voter ID. That was a statement made.
Well,
and the evidence is that that's the number of people who were turned away. That is not the same as the number of people who were unable to vote.
So you would like that just added into the answer, who were turned away from polling stations?
I would like it replaced with people turned away, because it isn't that it was only 14 who were unable to vote.
Well,
we don't know how many were unable to vote.
We don't know. No, nobody will ever know.
No, so we shouldn't make a categoric statement that we can't evidence.
Well, I think would the officer be happy to put in who were turned away from polling stations? Yeah, we'll make that adjustment.
And then the team had LinkedIn in their service plan, the comms team, and now they've handed it over to economic development. I don't remember seeing it in the economic development plan either. So is anyone following up on that?
have to get back to you in writing on that one.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't finished looking through the questions, so if someone else wants to follow up on theirs, I can come back.
I don't think anybody else has submitted as many questions as you have, councillor Kane. Councillor Inskip.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions on the questions I submitted. So first of all, on
These are questions for clarification,
yes,
councillor Inskip.
yeah. So first of all, on the communications section, I asked about the missed measurable targets, and in particular, what the answer given on LinkedIn says, since the launch has now been passed to economic development for further development. So I'll read that again. The answer says, since launch, this has now been passed to economic development for further development due to resource capacity in the comms team. So the report talked about we got to the stage of just over 200 followers on LinkedIn. So does any part of the organisation, whether it's communications, economic development, or anyone else, have a target to increase that this year, or is it are we where we are because of resource constraints?
Yes, so I'll follow up on whether there is a target for economic development, but we are where we are because of resource constraints against LinkedIn.
Okay, let me find my next one. So this was about the September figures unavailable due to a problem with the telephone line. What was the problem? I was really trying to understand, so it's a description of, I guess, the customer experience about them being unable to hear anything. I was trying to understand what the fault was and for how long, and what the, let's say, the loss of service was, rather than a description of what the, let's say, what a caller would experience. Do we know, let's say, how long did the problem persist? When we say a BT fault, what does a BT fault mean?
Annette, do you have any answers to this? You'd like to come forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the actual fault, IT would know that more so than myself, but I do know, I think I answered Councillor Vellacott's question as well, and I think it's just on the answer. Customers were affected from the 9th of September 23 to the 2nd of October 23. It didn't affect all customers, just it was an intermittent fault that affected some customers who, when they rang up, they either couldn't hear us, or when we rang out, they couldn't hear us, or when they did ring in, they'd get cut off.
Well, I'm trying to understand, I guess, the magnitude of the problem. Was it sort of 6 people, 60 people?
Oh no, it was
Sorry,
it was a lot more than that. It was sort of like, I couldn't say it was 1 in 25. I don't honestly know, because we couldn't measure it, because our telephone system couldn't report on it. Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Annette, but if it's a BT fault, then maybe this question ought to be directed at BT, because they are a law unto themselves, from speaking from personal experience. And I don't think the council can be held responsible for a fault from that is clearly something to do with BT and not with the council. I assume that the BT came in and fixed the issue in the end.
They did eventually, yes. I mean,
Yes.
the trouble is, if somebody brings in, we actually log that call, and then it will show us finished at a certain time. So I can't say how many it affected. I'm sorry.
so I would say if we have more information on what the fault was, potentially from the IT or ICT, then I think it'd be useful if that could be circulated.
Okay, well, I will forward your question on to ICT and ask them if they can shed any light onto what BT said was wrong with the telephone line. Thank you, Councillor Inskip. Have any further questions for clarification? Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chair. I asked about the customer satisfaction on customer services, and the main reasons given by people who were unsatisfied were poor communication, response times, or lack of response to service requests. So what has the council done to improve those issues?
Thank you, Annette.
When we receive customer feedback, we, if it's negative or even if it's positive, we do ask a question if they'd like us to follow it up. We then follow it up, you speak to them and find out exactly a bit more about the information. And then we pass it on to the service and they then contact them as well.
Thank you. Do we provide any training or monitoring to the services so that they do respond?
We get copied into the response, so we know that we follow it up to make sure that they are responded to.
Thank you. And then the other one is a general one. In quite a few of them, when I've asked them what the 3 top risks are, they mention staffing, whether that's recruitment, training, retention, or just the very small number of staff that they have. So if one is off, they have issues. So what is the council doing to address that staffing risk?
Right, so staffing does appear on our corporate risk register, and there are a number of actions we take in terms of reviewing the sort of exit interviews to find out why people have left the organisation. We also undertake very specific types of marketing for roles. So, for example, if I was looking for a planning officer, I would approach very specific areas in terms of advertising that role. And we also look at what's out in the market. So we benchmark our roles against neighbouring authorities and standard roles across, the local government sector. So there are a number of actions that we take, and they're listed in our corporate risk register.
Thank you. Christine Whelan.
Thank you, Chair. I asked the question on the waste collection and street cleansing about planned works documents being produced for the street cleaning and when communication will be put out to the public and when their street will be cleaned. It says that there are currently no plans to produce a schedule that identifies when individual streets will be cleaned. How can residents know when their street's going to be cleaned and whether vehicles need to be moved prior to that?
Thank you, Liz. I think all members were issued with a cleansing schedule. You should have received it by email saying what area and how often the frequency of cleansing would take place. I'm not sure we ever undertook to say that the individual streets would be mentioned.
No, I appreciate that, but I'm just stating a point that residents do need to know.
Yeah, I get that, but these are supposed to be questions for clarification.
Well, no, you've actually asked the question. What we've done is we've provided the information we have at the moment. We can't, or we wouldn't be providing it at street level. We have to do it in areas where street cleansing vehicles will be in, and that's the information that we've already provided.
Thank you, Liz. Do we have any further questions for clarification on answers already or questions on already submitted? Thank you, in which case then we will move through to the debate. If anybody has anything additional they would like to say, Councillor Inskip.
Yeah, I'll just pick up on a couple of points. The first one that that concerns me is, so I asked this question about what the future plans were around promotion on LinkedIn. So we had this launch in this year, and we're told in the report there was a target to get 400 followers. We're sitting at around about 200, and it looks like that's where we're going to stay. And I do think, economic development is an important area. LinkedIn is a resource that other authorities do use, and I took a look, for example, at Cambridge City that has over 6,000 followers. Really, 200 is neither here or there. Just put in context, I looked at Mark Inskip on LinkedIn, and he has over 2,000 followers. So to have then as our district council sitting at 200 looks pretty disappointing, and it's overall, I'm really concerned that we launch this and we say we're going to do something, and then we're failing to follow through on it. So that's one concern I want to note. The other one with a question, I don't think that needed any clarification, because one of the questions I asked is that it says in the waste and street cleansing services end of year report 23-24, it says to provide best value services through East Cambridgeshire street scene. And I've asked, well, how is that measured? And I've told the best value isn't independently measured. I do think providing best value services is a good goal, but if we're not measuring it, how can we claim to say that we're doing it, or how do we know whether we're doing it or not? So again, I think that's something we should seriously be thinking about, finding a way to be able to assess that. For example, benchmarking it against other authorities. And there may be other ways of solving the problem, but I think we should be looking at that.
Does anybody, Councillor Vellacott?
Thank you, Chair. I may take slightly less time than my opposition colleagues. My highlights from this one really are the Youth Fusion events, which I think fantastic. I'm glad we underwrote that funding last time. We've doubled homelessness relief. That's incredible. The target was, I think, 250, and we're well up towards the 500 mark of homelessness relief. I'm very happy about that. And I'm very pleased as well under the leisure section to see that Ross Piers Sports Centre will lead on Active for Health, as that's in my patch. The one thing that I was going to mention as well as the website, I'm glad that we've obviously put some funding aside in the budget for a new website. Would request at some point, sort of when we are aware, that members are sort of kept in the loop about timescale as well. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Oh, sorry, I keep switching the mic. Does anybody else have anything they would like to contribute to the debate before we move to the vote? In which case, then I'm happy to recommend that we approve the service delivery plans and that we note the end of year performance reports. Can I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Any officers who don't have to be here can now wend your weary way home. Thank you very much. We now move on to the East Cambs Street Scene Business Plan 24-25, and I welcome Liz, John, Nigel, Paul and Emma. Oh, it sounds like a band. Only one member hasn't got a chair. Oh, she has, it's at the other end. Oh. Thank you very much. Who is going to present this report to? Liz. Over you go, Liz.
Thank you very much, Chair. The ECS business plan has been brought to Operational Services Committee for approval following its approval by the board on the 7th of March. During 23-24, we've seen the introduction and implementation of the Street Smart project. This has enabled us to continue to build on improved performance of the service. The new management structure was successfully introduced. It has provided additional specialised resource at operational management level, which has contributed to improved performance, resilience and compliance of the service. ECSS has increased the number of directly employed staff, that's drivers and loaders, and this has enabled ECSS to become less reliant on agency workers. The workforce is more stable and settled, and we will continue to provide and promote positive culture throughout 24-25 and beyond. Progress against targets has been reported to Council throughout the year. The diagram on page 17 of the business plan provides highlights under each of the Street Smart themes. Annual performance shows positive improvements, and again, the business plan highlights two significant areas: productive days, sickness levels. The new operations manager is effectively implementing the sickness absence policy, which has driven these improvements and resulted in reduced dependency on agency staff. And the other area is around waste collection performance. We expect to see this improve further when the BarTech in-cab system is fully implemented. However, we do recognise that there is still room for improvement. So during the final year of the MOA, ECSS will consolidate and build on the improved delivery of waste and street cleansing services. We will continue to focus on delivering high quality services and if selected by the council to provide the service in future years, work with ECDC and agree the service specification costs. In addition to this, we will continue to review street cleansing services as outlined in page 22 of the business plan. I would just now like to hand over to Nigel to run through the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. So looking at the figures on page 7 of the business plan, this has been prepared as always on a break-even basis, so no profit or loss. The management fee has been agreed by East Cambs District Council at 4.6 million. And the key estimates in my costings include the fact that the recycling credits, I've assumed a rebate level of 32.84 a tonne and 624 tonnes a month, which were the latest averages in 23-24. Staffing budget is based on 60 full-time operatives plus 5.8 agency staff. Budget for pay increases, we put in line with the last 2 years award at 1,925 per person, which equates to an average of 6.3%. The vehicle debt repayment increases by 360,000 as a result of the 10 new RCVs that were purchased in the autumn of last year. But that results in 177k reduction in vehicle repairs and hire costs for 24-25. Fuel budgeted 200,000 litres of HVO with a price difference from diesel of 35p more than diesel. And the diesel price that's been assumed is £1.32 a litre. And finally, waste disposal, we've got a cost of the processing of just over £50 a tonne until August, and then an additional £93,000 of cost for the new contract that will come into effect in September. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel and Liz. I am happy to, we are being asked to consider the business plan and approve it. I am happy to propose this from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Thank you.
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Goodall. There various questions have been submitted by various members. Does anybody have any questions for clarification on the answers they've received? Councillor Kane.
Thank you. I'm still confused about why the overtime and agency costs are so high. You're budgeting for 5.8 agency staff per week, but we've just heard that the workforce is more stable and settled, and that indeed in the last quarter of the current year, you're actually down to 5 agency staff, which still seems quite a lot. I don't understand. Can you explain why you feel you're going to need nearly 6 agency staff every week now that you're fully staffed and you've got all the new arrangements in place and sickness absence is falling?
So that's, we are fully staffed, but that can change. So we had 60 staff in the last couple of weeks of February, for example. That's dropped down now to 58. So we will need to push that up, back up from the agency people. Looking at the averages, in the first quarter of 23-24, it was 8.5. It has come down to just under 5 in the last quarter. And I just think it's a prudent way to go is to budget for 5.8, given those numbers.
So when you're bringing in agency to cover for vacancies, you've fully budgeted for the full-time staff? So you already have that money in the budget?
Yeah, that's true. The budget is based on 60 full-time staff, so there won't be quite the extra money. There will be a little bit of extra cost because obviously the agency staff are slightly more expensive than employed staff.
So is the agency budget based on that little bit of extra cost or the full cost?
Full cost, sorry.
Thank you. Okay. And then on the fuel costs.
Councillor Kane, these are questions for clarification on the answers you have already received.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
On the fuel costs, you said HVO is 1.67 per litre, and diesel is 1.32. When I asked East Cam's finance director about this, on the 15th of February, he told me that the price of diesel was £1.19 and the price of HVO was £1.55. Is his price out of date or is your price out of date?
So the difference there, I guess, it's 36p in that particular example, but roughly HBO is tracking at 35p more expensive than diesel. The diesel price that I've assumed in the budget is 132 for the whole of the year. So that is slightly higher than I've been paying recently, but it does allow for an amount of movement should that happen in the fuel price.
So is the current price of diesel £1.19?
Most recent price that I paid was a fraction over, well, the street scene paid was a fraction over £1.20 per litre for diesel. The £1.19 was correct in February. The most recent is 1.20.
So diesel is about 1.20. So that would make HVO about 1.56.
Yeah.
And last year you budgeted at 1.56 per litre. So why does the budget have to increase this year?
Again, I just find it prudent that if I use 120, which is the price that I'm paying right now, I've got no room for manoeuvre should the price of diesel go up in future months. And as I say, HBO is tracking at about 35p above diesel.
But you have got some room for manoeuvre because in the 23-24 budget, you budgeted at £1.56 a litre for all your fuel. And we're saying that the most expensive fuel, HVO, is £1.56 and diesel is less. So you've already got a contingency in the 416,600. You don't need the extra amount.
Councillor Kane, if I can interrupt, Nigel, it seems to me that because they're being prudent and we don't know which way diesel prices or HVO is going to go, they're being prudent and allowing a wide range of budgeting prices. It seems to me that street scene are damned if they do and damned if they don't, because if they hadn't allowed for potential cost increases and had to come back to this council or this committee for more money, you would be all over them. I think this is an utterly unreasonable line of questioning, to be honest with you, and I think I'm going to bring it to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Else have any questions for clarification?
Can I ask a further question on a different item?
If it's
of
for clarification only,
Yeah.
yes.
On the governance report, you say that some of the recommendations have to be approved by council, but there were quite a few that don't have to be approved by council. And that the deadline was the 31st of March this year. Have they all been done?
Through you, Chair, I can confirm that the actions that were due for the 31st of March have been completed.
So what training did the directors have?
Thank you. Training was delivered by an external provider, Trowers and Hamlin, to the director of all the directors of the trading company.
And what was the training?
It was on the roles and responsibilities of a director and the duties and a run through the Companies Act and the most relevant parts of the director's training and in what capacity, what functions they act to comply with the duties of the, that's the best summary I can give, Chair.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any further questions? Councillor Inskip.
Yes, on the first question I asked, I was asking the status of the integration of the new Bartec sort of system in the NCAB digital system. The answer I've got is multiple integrations have been created. We're awaiting confirmation from Bartec that the resolution codes are available for final testing. So that implies to me that the integration isn't complete yet. What do you have a timeline for when it will be complete? Are we talking another week or two, or is it going to be longer?
Through you, Chair, we'll have to take that one away and come back to members. Once we know what the timeline is, we'll circulate it to all the members.
Okay, and then another timeline question. Can you give me, so I asked about the street cleansing review and about how many more stages. The answer is there's going to be another stage that will conclude in the next few weeks. And the implementation date will depend on the outcome. Can you give me at least some indication of whether we're looking for changes in the next couple of months or whether it's going to take significantly longer than that?
Through you, Chair. One of the things that we're looking at as part of the street cleansing review is the purchase of new vehicles, and as to whether or not new vehicles will be more efficient than the manpower. Obviously, if we take that decision to do it, the implementation of that will take longer because of the rollout of those vehicles, because they're not readily available to pick up tomorrow. I do intend to conclude the review in the next few weeks in order to present it to board, my outcomes to board, and to make some decisions at that point. That's likely to be early June, and then implementation to follow. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, everybody. And right now, I think unless there's any further questions, we can now move to the debate. Does anybody have anything they would like to add? Councillor Bellicott.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to say a couple of things here. The first thing, I asked a question earlier about the Environment Act and the risk associated with implementing the Environment Act. And I do think we need to be careful with our risks there. So whatever we decide through the working party process and later on down the line needs to balance our targets for optimal service with what our residents need and also what the Environment Act demands of us. And we'll need to account for the funding uncertainty in that. So I think after explanation, it is right that we keep that risk high and monitored closely. Indeed, that corresponds quite closely, so the company's risk will be very close to what the council's risk is anyway, because their aims are one and the same in that matter. But overall, seeing as we have to provide a waste service for another year and DCSS is the model we're using, the plan reflects pretty good HR changes which have caused far lower sickness rates, which the board are to be commended for, and more financial robustness. So I'm fairly pleased to accept it for another year, and certainly I think the most productive thing this committee can do is avoid the harsh and somewhat unnecessary lines of questioning and question with the regards to backing our waste and street cleaning services as best we can.
Councillor Bellicott, Councillor Inskip, and then Councillor Kane.
So actually, I disagree with Councillor Bellicott. We do have to ask robust questions, because at the end of the day, what we're doing here is we're agreeing to a sizable amount of money, council taxpayers' money, not our money, that is paying for this service. Now, as is helpfully provided in one of Councillor Kane's answer to one of Councillor Kane's questions, the business plan isn't seeking to bring any new services in. And indeed, that's the same, has been the same for the past few years with services. But if I go back just 2 years, and then we had a plan that was foreseeing a cost of £3 million as a management fee. 2 years later, we're looking at an increase to £4.6 million to deliver exactly the same service. And I think in that we can just stand back and say we shouldn't be asking questions, but I think that would be very wrong. I have one of the key concerns I've had. We've heard a number of answers about being prudent in terms of how we deal with the budget, but actually what we're doing is we're providing a lot of contingency in the budget, presumably to avoid the scenario where there is an overspend. But in so doing that, we're committing substantially more than 50% more of council taxpayers' money than we were doing 2 years ago to deliver exactly the same service. That doesn't sit comfortably with me, because I think we have a responsibility to look at spending council taxpayers' money diligently. And I think if we were just to go ahead and approve that increase today, I don't think we would be doing that.
Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chair. One of the unexpected benefits of the wrong business plan being put in our papers is that we have the 2023-24 business plan ready to hand and in front of us, as well as the 24-25 one that was sent out subsequently. And from that, we can see that the expenses in 2023-24 were 4.2 million. And the expenses in 2024-25 are 5.4 million. That's more than a 25% increase, which is a substantial increase in 1 year. And I'm afraid I haven't had satisfactory answers. I think the fuel at 416,632, which is what the budget was in 23-24, is perfectly adequate to pay the fuel costs as they stand at the moment, and indeed has a contingency of nearly 8,000 in it if there are price rises. So I don't think the fuel budget is correct. I'm also very concerned about the agency cost budget, because that's gone up substantially when yet we would have expected, on everything we've been told, that that would come down. And we've heard today that it has in fact got the full costs of people in it. It's made no allowance for the fact that some of those people will be covering vacancies which are already budgeted in the staff costs. So this budget is not a robust budget. It's not a good budget. As Councillor Inskip says, it commits a large amount of public money to a service that hasn't been able to show that it actually needs that money in the budget. I don't think it's robust. I don't think we should accept it. I think we should ask them to come back with a better thought through, more realistic budget. There's a balance between prudence and just making something so high that it's always going to be easy to achieve it. And I have never complained about people overspending on their budget. What I complained about, and will always complain about, is people having major variances on their budgets that they don't tell us about until the fourth quarter of the financial year. Unless there's something unexpected that has happened in that fourth quarter, that is not good financial management. I think we should have a tight budget and have good reporting against it and monitor this closely. So I'll be voting against this.
Thank you. Councillor Goodall.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the budgeting for wages and agency staff, yes, it's true. If you have a vacancy, then you don't have to pay that wage, that person, for a vacancy. But when you've got sickness, you've got to pay statutory sick rate and the agency staff to cover. So that's where it's prudent to have that difference. And that's all I've got to say about it.
Does anybody else have anything to say? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I disagree totally with Councillor Kane. This budget, looking at it, is a good, solid budget. It's totally hypocritical at times when, you know, the company is castigated for coming to the council for extra monies. Yet when they do it and budget prudently, then they're castigated. If we'd gone out to an external company for this, then the costs have been higher. We've got a company that is wholly owned by the council, and I know it's something that the Liberal Democrats cannot get their heads around, but it's there for the benefit of all of the people. So I will be, unlike Councillor Kane, I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Does anybody else? Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you very much. I've just been listening to the debate, and I'm only a sub, and I don't know all the background and all the rest of it. So I'm just listening to it as a completely one-off discussion. And it does seem to me strange that we have the kind of comments and discussion that we've had on this. It seems to me a very relevant question to say, why has the budget gone up 25%? I think that's a worthy question to ask. But also I understand in the budgeting process that what's going on here, and I'd like to sort of say to people, obviously you're proud of this budget, you've worked hard on it, you've done your best in it, and you've put things in, and that's fine and good, and you've been prudent, and that's fine and good. But when we ask questions about it, we're not castigating, we're not saying, oh, you've got it wrong and we're all going to beat you over the head with a stick or something. And it does, I think, behove us to work out that budgets are not there to be hit exactly. That's not what a budget's for. A budget is to govern our behaviour, to govern our actions, to give us a direction of a travel, to know what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to do with all of this. And that's what saddens me when I think we can't get a sort of debate that comes out and does this. And then one of the questions I wanted to ask was, in previous years, how many times have you come back and hit the budget? Or how many times have you come back and asked for more money? Clearly, if you've been coming back and asking for money, then there's obviously an inbuilt kind of, oh, I don't want to go back and ask for my money. That's a normal behavioural thing. But that's nothing to do with business. That's an understandable person thing. So, I think we should review this budget to say, is it a budget that meets what we want to do? Does it direct our behaviour to monitoring performance statistics? Do we get the right performance statistics? Are we happy that we've hit it? Or, if we've got a more stringent performance statistics, we're not just going to ask for 25% increase up front, but we come back and say why we ask for it and what we do in a reasonable way. And I think that, to me, would seem a far better way of doing things, if I may say so. Thank you.
Chair, may I offer a point of personal explanation? Thank you. I would just point out to members opposite that ECSS has had its management fee. We debated it at council in February. This is the business plan. This is the governance structure, the financial information.
Sorry, Chair, how is this a point
I'm
of
completing
personal-
my point of personal explanation, Councillor Kane. The governance structure and the key financial information and the risk management to do with the company. So we're not discussing this with the view to changing the budget. We're discussing it with how best to use the budget. And as Councillor Sharp rightly says, this is the most prudent way to do it.
I'm not sure what your point of personal explanation, but I would, unless anybody's got anything else to say, I would like to sum up, if any, or might have my share.
Just to clarify, what we're agreeing today is whether or not to approve the business plan,
Yes,
which includes
the
the
budget.
budget.
Yes. So I would just like to say, the world has changed in the last 2 years, hugely. We're suffering post-COVID. I can remember Councillor Inskip railing and saying we need to give the drivers, we need to give everybody pay increases, which they all got, which cost a huge amount of money. Off the top of my head, I think it was just about £300,000. I'm not quite sure of that figure, but I'm sure somebody will put me right. We're moving on to hydro-treated vegetable oil to try and reduce our carbon footprint. That is going to cost more money. The district has grown enormously. So are you expecting any company to deliver exactly the same service for a world that has changed, a district that has grown, while using a different fuel system with new lorries and an improved depot? And you want us to do that all for the same management fee that was being provided 2 years ago? Well, I'm not quite sure what crystal ball or world you're living in, but I wish I could provide things for my house at the same price I was paying 2 years ago. I can assure you I can't. And if nobody has anything else further to say, I'd like to now move to the vote. So I am recommending that we approve the ECS Business Plan 24-25, and I would ask now for a show of hands. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. And thank you very much for coming this evening. Now move on to agenda item number 9, which is the Housing Adaptions and Repair Policy 2019. Hello, Marie. Thank you for.
Thank you, Chair.
And Liz. Double prices. We'd like to set out your report. Thank you.
Thank you. We currently administer disabled facilities grants for adaptations to people's homes to enable them to remain living in their homes. This provides access to essential facilities such as level access showers, stair lifts, ramps, and access to other essential facilities. The legislation that surrounds the delivery of these grants has not kept pace with inflation, and we are now seeing cases where the cost of the works exceeds the grant limit of 30k. The current housing adaptation policy allows for a top-up grant of 15,000. However, for major works such as extensions, this still does not cover the cost. We've seen prices rise in materials and labour increase significantly, and as a result, we are faced with vulnerable people in our community who are now living in unsuitable housing. This affects the health of not only the disabled occupant, but the whole family as a result. The majority of these cases tend to be for children with severe medical problems. We are requesting that the top-up should be increased to 30k for exceptional cases. This would be for cases where all other avenues have been explored and no suitable solution could be found. As we have an underspend of the capital budget over recent years, there would be no financial implications on the council, and it would enable the budget to be better allocated to those most in need. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Marie. We are asking to approve the amendments in the policy as set out below. And in exceptional cases, the officers will have a discretion to award a top-up grant to the maximum of 30,000 without the repayment condition. Do I have a proposer for this agenda item, please?
Happy to propose.
And do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for clarification for the officers, please? Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chair. I asked how many households are waiting for adaptations, and you said that all adaptations where a compromise scheme couldn't be achieved have been closed. So does that mean that the people we weren't able to help with adaptations will now have to start the application process again?
That's correct. They will. Yes, they have to go back and be reassessed by occupational therapy and then come back through again.
Is there anything we can do to help them make that process less onerous?
I would need to speak to the OT therapy service. They close the cases, and once they've closed, it's very clear cut. They have to go back to the beginning. They'll still have all their notes. We'll still have the more recent cases. We will still have some of their notes. But basically, they will have to start the process again, and there's not much we can do to change that situation, I'm afraid.
Are you saying it's not in your control?
It's not within my control. No, it's not within my control to change CPFT policies.
But is there anything council officers can do to help them through the process? Because I imagine that it's been hugely stressful waiting for these repairs and not getting them. And now they've got to start again. And I accept that's out of our control. But whether there's anything our officers can do to assist them to make it as straightforward as possible.
I don't think there is really anything we can do to make it more straightforward. It's a fairly straightforward process once they get to us. We can't really make it any more streamlined than it is. We may be able to get occupational therapy to give them an urgent priority, in which case they'd go to the front.
That would be a help, because I am quite concerned that, as I say, they've already gone through a stressful period as it is, without us adding to it and adding further delay, because I think this is a good policy. It's just a pity that we've had to close all those cases.
Yeah.
Do we have any further questions of clarification? Councillor Vellacott.
Just wanted to check, Marie, in Appendix 4, you've listed some of the means testing criteria. I wondered if attendance allowance was also a qualifying criterion. I appreciate you might not know that.
Attendance allowance isn't counted as income, and it's not means tested. So the King could get attendance allowance, but he wouldn't qualify for a grant.
Fair enough. He doesn't live in our patch either, so that's one thing we haven't got to worry about. Does anybody have anything further they would like to contribute? Councillor Goodall.
Thank you, Chair. I see this document's 2019. Is it due to be reviewed and updated, or is this class as the review?
So there's currently an ongoing review of the county policy, which is what you have in front of you. It's a county-wide policy, but which we can add our amendments. So this is just a part that we have in our district.
Thank you. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment and remember, I think it was about 3 years ago in my ward, we had rather a difficult case. I think Marie and her colleague dealt with that really well, and where the expectation, shall we say, of the resident was way above what the scheme was actually able to offer. I think, and I drive past that home quite regularly, and I think it looks good, and I think hopefully we've actually satisfied the resident, which were, going back 3 years, I remember was quite a difficult situation. Remember having many calls from the residents, and I know you and your team did as well. So thank you for that. And it was just really somebody expecting, I suppose, a Rolls-Royce job when something was perfectly adequate, yeah. You may, I don't expect you to comment on that particular case, no.
That's fine. We always have to manage our clients' expectations. Obviously, there's lots of things on social media and DIY SOS. But we're not that service.
Nick Knowles has got a lot to answer for. Does anybody have any further questions for clarification before we move to the debate? Does anybody feel they want anything to say? Particularly before
Sorry,
we move on?
I thought we were in the debate, sorry, that's not the debate, sorry. Sorry.
In which case then I'd like to move to the vote, if that's okay. Can I have a show of hands for those in favour? Thank you very much. I thought it was a lovely and well-written document. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
We now move on to agenda item number 10, which is the community engagement strategy. And I'm handing over to Lewis and Stephanie.
Thank you, Chair. Please may I start by pointing out two corrections. On page 10 of Appendix 1, the second column refers to the district covers an area of 655 kilometres squared. This should read as 655 square kilometres. Since the community engagement strategy was last updated, much has changed, which impacts on how the council engages with local community. Examples of such changes are stated at 3.2 of the committee report. The council's community engagement strategy, which includes an action plan, has been updated and can be found at Appendix 1. This strategy includes examples of what the council currently does and commits to continue to do to achieve effective engagement. The action plan sets out what more the council will do to achieve this effective engagement. Please can it be pointed out that further to a question raised by Councillor Kane prior to committee, further consideration has been given to the target on houses of multiple occupation by the team leading on this target, and have proposed that the action on page 2 of the action plan is removed if members are happy. Members are requested to approve the community engagement strategy and action plan as found at Appendix 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stephanie. Is that an amendment to the recommendation then? I'm just not quite sure how that, no?
Sorry, Chair, what are we amending?
I'm not quite sure. That's what I'm asking. Something was been removed. Lewis, can you clarify?
Yes, I will do, Chair. To clarify, there is an action in the action plan on houses of multiple occupation. Councillor Kane asked the question about this particular target, and following the submission of that and given for further consideration given by the team leading on that target, it is proposed to remove that that specific target from the action plan. It doesn't affect the recommendation as a whole. It's just one action from the action plan to be removed.
Thank you very much, Lewis. We're all happy with that. Everybody happy with that? Sorry, Councillor. Councillor Kane.
I don't know that I am entirely happy. The target was to identify the registered houses of multiple occupation that could be engaged with for engagement with residents of houses of multiple occupancies. And the deadline for that was March 27. And my question was, surely we have already identified the registered houses. So I think it could be amended to take out identify the registered houses, but I think the target of engaging with the residents in those houses remains important.
Lewis, do you want to respond?
I'd be happy to go and speak to the team that would be responsible for carrying out that engagement and get a steer from them.
Oh, hang on, Liz. Super subs coming on.
Sorry, I would agree with you that there is already that list of registered and we can easily engage with those as we did during COVID. We have, as I said in my response to you, there are some unidentified HMOs out there, which we will be proactively seeking out. So again, that group of people are a group that sometimes need a different kind and form of engagement. So yes, I think the amendment that the amendment would be, and it was at my suggestion, because I was thinking we're just confusing and it's not worded well, that target perhaps should come out, but I would, the amendment I think would work.
Sorry,
I'm so sorry about the confusion. The confusion is all my fault.
Utterly
it's not
confused.
Lewis's.
So you were going to remove it, but councillor Kane would like it to be amended to.
Well, I think if it said that they were going to engage with residents of houses of multiple occupancies and identify those that are not currently on the register, that would be good.
So
I wouldn't like to see it removed because engaging with them is important.
Yes, so we're just amending, I'm not sure what the amendment is.
Well, we're
councillor
taking
Kane.
out the identify the registered
But
houses because
continue-
we have that register.
Yeah, so continue to identify with? Or continue to engage with?
Continue to engage with and identify registered, because there's some that have not been
Right.
identified yet.
So is that an official amendment?
Yeah, I'd like to propose that
Yeah.
amendment.
Do we need to officially, we don't, I think apparently we don't need to, because it's just.
If I can come in, sorry, Chair.
You carry on.
Presumably then we would remove the timescale March 2027. It'd just be ongoing. It would revert to on, because that's what is being done at the moment. Is that,
Yeah.
am I understanding that correctly?
So when the policy's
Yeah.
published, it will be amended to include that phrasing. We don't need to put it through as a formal amendment, I'm understanding.
Because the amendment, if I may, Chair.
You carry on.
So the recommendation is to approve the strategy as set out in Appendix 1.
Yeah.
So it is an amendment of the recommendation. We're still looking to approve the same strategy.
Yeah.
However, we will take away, the same way we do when we spot typos and these
Yes.
things, we will take it away just to add that clarification, and we've got a note of that. So we'll amend it for final.
Tidy up the word, tidy up the word.
Exactly.
Perfect. There we go. But brilliant. Okay, fabulous. I need a proposer for this then, please. Do I have a proposer?
Happy to propose. Chair.
Thank you, Kelly. And do I have a seconder?
You Chair, second the recommendation.
Thank you, Lucius. Does anybody have any further questions for clarification? Councillor Inskip, I hope they're not going to be confusing.
Well, it's that I asked a question about, there's a target to identify the most common non-English languages spoken in the district to inform translation services with a target date of December 2025. My question was trying to understand why it took so long to do that. And I still don't really understand the answer, because it says the target date was selected with consideration of the housing and community advice team's other priorities and workloads. But that data, that's actually a census data. It took me 30 seconds to find that, and I can share that with officers if they want. They can tick that off the box, off their to-do list. But I was trying to understand why that target was so late, and I guess my follow-on question was also really trying to understand, there were some things where the information is readily available, and why don't we just get that information now? And I know it may take some time then to take the actions that are informed by that data, but we should be able to get the data pretty quickly.
Lewis.
Thank you. It may well be that the targets are achieved well before the target date. The dates in the action plan are what the individual teams agreed to, as Councillor Inskip said. They've done that with consideration of their other priorities and workloads and commitments, but it may well be a case that the targets are achieved before the date, especially those that seem relatively straightforward. In terms of the first question around the one that was for the community and housing, the housing and community advisors team, obtaining the information on identifying the most common non-English languages spoken in the district. As per the response, the council is aware of the common non-English languages used and spoken, and already does use translation services, but I believe it was in December or by December 25, they would be just reviewing and updating the information that they've already got available.
Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for clarification? Or are we happy to move to debate/vote? Anybody want to have anything to say? Councillor Bellicott.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think that this is an excellent strategy. I also think close engagement with the comms team as well to get it out there is very important. Grateful to see that in there. I would propose, not as an amendment to this recommendation, but as in terms of the forward agenda, that committee receives a biennial update on this. And I would probably propose the same for item 11 as well when it comes to it. The only reason I say that is because they are long time scales. They will both expire at the end of the past the end of the administration, not as a review, because obviously we don't want to review a policy that's working. But I think it would be very useful for us as members to keep tabs with that if you're in agreement, Chair.
That's eminently sensible, just a sort of brief update to see how things are going and whether or not you'd need support from the committee in any other way. I'm quite happy to push that. We can add that to the forward agenda, please. Thank you very much. If anybody doesn't have anything, that's dreadful grammar that is. If anybody has nothing else to say, can we move to the vote, please? And have a show of hands. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Blunder on to agenda item number 11. So we're going to replace Stephanie with Kerry. Thank you for coming, Stephanie. And this is the Vulnerable Community Strategy 24-29. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The Council's Vulnerable Community Strategy has been updated and can be found at Appendix 1. The strategy sets out what the Council currently does and commits to continue to do to ensure that it understands, considers, responds to and prevents issues affecting residents that are or could contribute towards vulnerability. The strategy contains an action plan which sets out what more the Council will do to add value to existing efforts. Members are requested to approve the Council's Vulnerable Community Strategy and Action Plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a proposer for this recommendation, which is to approve the Vulnerable Community Strategy and Action Plan?
Thank you, Chair. Propose the recommendations written.
Thank you, Lucius. Do I have a seconder?
Thanks, Chair. Happy to second.
Thank you, Kelly. And again, if we can bring this one in for a review of forward planning within 2 years would be really fantastic. Does anybody have any questions of clarification for any questions that were already submitted? Councillor Kane.
So I asked whether we've assessed whether there are sufficient disabled parking spaces in Ely and across the district. And I've been told no formal assessment is carried out. Why not?
Yeah, certainly.
That's for another service team, so I'll take that question away and direct it to the correct service team.
Thank you. And I also asked why the restrictions finished in the evening, and I was told there haven't been any complaints or concerns. But why do we need complaints or concerns? Why do we assume that disabled people don't want to go out after 6 o'clock at night?
Again, that will be submitted to you in writing. In fact, if you could submit to all members of the committee, please, Isabel. Oh, sorry.
And then with the enforcement of the restrictions, the answer I got was only about in our car parks. Down the High Street and Market Street, I quite often see cars parked in disabled car parking spaces without blue badges. Indeed, I have myself been blocked in a disabled space by a white van who chose to use half of my space as well. Luckily, I was still able to get my mother in the car and her equipment. But if I had needed the back of the car, which a lot of disabled people do, I'd have been stuck. So I would be interested to know what we do to enforce the disabled car parking bays outside of our car parks.
Again, we'll submit that question in, I can't speak today. We'll submit the answer in writing and again to all members, please. Christine, did you have your hand up? You can, okay. Anybody have any questions for clarification? In which case then we will thank the officers and we'll move to the debate/vote. Does anybody have any? Christine has something to say.
I have a blue badge and I have to say in Ely and surrounding areas, I rarely have a problem parking. We go out in the evening and we just simply transfer the blue badge to the other car. Never have a issue with parking at all. Perhaps I'm particularly lucky. If we need to get my wheelchair out the back, yes, you do need a little bit of extra room, but I understand other people have more complex needs, but certainly I've never had a problem about parking.
Thank you, Christine. Does Councillor Inskip?
Yeah, and my comment isn't about parking, my comment's about the strategy and the action plan. So I think this is a very welcome update, and yeah, very happy to support this. I think I won't go through the whole document, but I think it's a good document. I think similarly to what we've said with other strategies, it would be good to have a periodic update. I think maybe an annual update rather than anything more frequent than that. Probably should be
Well,
enough.
it's already added to the forward agenda,
Okay.
Councillor Inskip, so it's already taken care of. Are we quite happy to move then to, if nobody has anything further to say, Councillor Bellicott?
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing particularly to add. I'm glad we've got unanimous support for this, certainly. So the resilience and self-reliance of our communities is obviously very important. But I wanted to highlight particularly, we've got a focus on supporting those experiencing loneliness. And I think that's a problem that is not well researched, and it's a problem that is affected in all age brackets. And our district is no exception. We've seen some quite stunning figures in there from the research that has been conducted. So I'm very, very pleased that this is addressing it as well. Again, due to the timescale, I would be very pleased if the committee received a biennial report. But in general, I'm very pleased that the committee is able to support the continued work that the strategy puts forward.
Thank you. I just have to say I was staggered by the number actually of armed service personnel who come out of the forces and feel very vulnerable and lonely, and I was quite staggered by that. And I thought there was some very just quite distressing figures in here actually about loneliness. So I think if we ever see anybody that we are neighbours with, we need to start talking to our neighbours more. That's what I would say, because you never know who's quietly lonely behind a front door. Councillor Goodall.
On the armed forces part of things, being an ex-soldier myself, the reason for the loneliness is, especially if someone's come out after a long service, they've had rank and stature, which is now taken away from them. They start at the bottom of the pile in their new environment, and they're used to going up to the pay office. They're used to going to the medical centre, the dental centre. They're not used to life outside. And being former soldiers and independent, they don't like to ask. People should go up to them and introduce themselves and bring them into the community and help them out. They've served our country and they deserve the support.
Yeah, I completely agree. So if we know any ex-servicemen, we need to go and talk to them, but just generally, just be kind to everybody, is what I say. Right, thank you very much. So we can now move to the vote, please. We are now approving the recommendations to approve the Council's Vulnerable Community Strategy and Action Plan, and they'll come back and give us an update in 2 years. Can I have a show of hands, please? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to the Health and Wellbeing Strategy and Action Plan. You're the last two standing. I'll hand over to Liz and Martin.
Right. The Health Wellbeing Strategy and Action Plan has been developed in line with the Corporate Plan Action for 23-24. The Health and Wellbeing Strategy outlines how the council works collaboratively, that word, collaboratively, yes, with partners to help residents live happy and healthy lives. The council is committed to working towards the priorities developed by the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Health and Wellbeing Integrated Care Strategy. The council strategy sets out how the council plays an important role with the wider health landscape by delivering services, the service it does as part of its core business. The integrated care system and public health recognise the council's role in prevention of ill health and its unique position to deliver at a community level. With funding through the ICS, the Integrated Care System, and Public Health, we've been able to fund the 13 warm hubs throughout the district last year, 9 of which have continued as community spaces. We've held events raising awareness and support available to improve health and wellbeing. We've established a close working relationship with our local primary network and our valued members of the Integrated Neighbourhood Board, along with other key stakeholders. And even though I say it myself, we are actually, I think, as an integrated neighbourhood, the envy of other district councils in the way we work very well together. In paragraph 3.6, the report outlines the goals and priorities of the integrated care strategy. The health and wellbeing strategy and action plan identifies how the council will deliver on the same priorities. Even though health of people in East Cambs is generally better than the England average, there are disparities in health outcomes. These inequalities have been exacerbated in recent years by COVID-19 and the cost of living crisis. The strategy and action plan endorses the council's commitment and the role that the council plays in improving the health outcomes of our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Liz. We will be asked to approve the draft health and wellbeing strategy action plan. Do I have a proposer for this, please?
Chair, very happy to propose this.
Okay, thank you, Martin. And a seconder?
Thank you. Happy to second the proposal, Chair.
Thank you, Lucius. Are there any, I can't speak this afternoon, questions of clarification for questions already submitted? Councillor Shepherd.
I haven't submitted a question prior, but it's a point of clarification.
Yeah.
Fantastic document. I mean, who could argue with it? It's clearly wonderful. All these great things. I do wonder, we're going to increase the number of years people spend in good health. We're going to do all of this. We're going to, you know, that's marvelous. They seem rather huge goals. And then I read that the budget is £5,000. Have I got that right?
Yeah, the budget has been set at £5,000. We have and been very lucky to attract external funding to help specific projects, which we work collaboratively with the PCN, the Integrated Neighbourhood Board. But that is the budget that we have and we work towards or within.
That's clearly fantastic, obviously. I do wonder though, having a document with such marvellous goals in, are they really achievable at a budget level of 5,000? I mean,
Isabel would like to come back on the budget figure.
I don't mean to query the budget. I'm not querying the budget figure.
No,
I'm saying we've got goals which are to increase the number of years people spend in good health. Adult social care is the significant money bucket that the county council and every county council in the country have got to worry about. We're going to reduce inequalities of preventable death before the age of 75. And we're going to achieve better outcomes for our children. On this, it doesn't specify, but elsewhere, I'm sure it does. And I do wonder if that's kind of reasonable with a budget of 5,000.
Who wants to answer?
May I just take this one? So I think it's important to note that this is one part of a much broader set of actions and strategies that are being delivered at a regional level. It's also worth saying that the budget, while specific to 5,000 specific to deliverables from here, our services more generally contribute to this anyway. And it's about focusing our existing services, like our leisure services, in an integrated and coordinated way across the region. So the budget to achieve these outcomes is much bigger than the 5,000 assigned specifically for projects relating to this, because we're already doing that. That's part of how we deliver our leisure services.
So does it say somewhere else what the 5,000 is going to go towards?
The £5,000 will go towards specific projects. So last year it went towards ensuring that we could put on the health and welfare. So that was an event that was specifically run by the district council. And also it's as and when things come up, it's sort of the added value bit to the service. So it is for sort of
events very specific that, or if we need to contribute towards another project that actually may be being run by a voluntary service or something else. So it's where we can identify that it will provide that added value. And I think as Isabel has pointed out, that the delivery of this recount, we deliver an awful lot of this through our core business. So it's making sure that each of our departments, and they have identified what they do to help towards making those improving health outcomes.
I don't mean to disparage it in any way. I'm not disparaging it. Please understand that. I'm just saying that if the 5,000 is actually being targeted at something specific, then we should have a document which talks about the 5,000 and those specific things, which I'm sure we do in specific much more things. Whereas for this great big strategy document, I think, you know, it makes not a lot of sense, I think, to say we're going to achieve all of these goals on a budget of 5,000.
Can I don't think that they're not saying that all those things are going to be achieved with £5,000, because there are a lot of this, things like the fantastic work that Martin's done in producing the 154,000 for the swimming pools. That was external to that, but is all part of the health and wellbeing strategy. So there are other departments within the council that are already adding into this. This is a whole council thing. The £5,000 is for if somebody, as Liz has just said, if a volunteer agency came and said, we want to put something on, can we have some money? That £5,000 is part of that. It's not to deliver the whole thing. Would that be right? Am I making, does that make sense? Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct. So I think we haven't put. So the budget is in the report of the budget that sits there against health and well-being. So that is that specific pot of money that is provided there for those special things. The rest of it, because I think because it is part of, we as a district council are contributing within each department an amount of, you know, that paying the staff, it's like Angela's staff, paying them to give advice and support to homeless people actually improves their health outcomes. But we have not within this strategy gone through each of those individual budgets to put a percentage against that staffing cost. So that is perhaps where the strategy does not specify a specific budget against those deliverables. It just within the report provides you that pot of money that we can call upon for additional events or additional activities that we feel we should as a district council contribute to.
I think what might be useful, Councillor Shepherd, is if you had a sort of a one-to-one with Liz, and she can explain how it all works for you, because I know you're a new councillor, so you may not be aware of how it all sort of comes together like a tentacle. Thank you very much. Does anybody, Councillor Ambrose Smith?
We must remember as well that other levels of local government do play a part in health and well-being. At Little Port, we fund a youth worker, children and young people. We fund an older person's worker who does considerable work combating loneliness and organising events. So across the district, if some of the larger parishes and town councils did that sort of thing, that makes a huge impact.
Thank you, Councillor Amber. Oh, hands up all over the place. Who's
Sorry.
first? I don't know. I'm going to take you first, Christine.
Have we gone into the debate now?
Oh, we can do.
Right, so I was just wondering, so I thought there was questions.
Unless
but
anybody has
we
any
seem to
further
have gone
questions,
into
which I'm
debate.
assuming that we seem to have drifted into debate, I have to say, I think.
Right, okay, so my point, just one sort of typo I've managed to see on page
Well spotted.
155 of the plan. I assume it means early help and not eerie help on the children
don't
and
know.
young people.
Could be eerie help.
Eerie help.
Why not?
It's on page 155.
Where are you looking? Here. In the centre.
In the centre, yeah. You got it?
Lower column, just on.
Children and young people, children in East Cambridge should experience high rates of early health.
Oh, yes. It could be earring help.
Well, it could be. But just thought I'd
Probably
put
earlier.
that
Well
out
spotted.
as a typo.
Well spotted, councillor. Councillor Whelan. Councillor Kane, you had your hand up as well, sorry.
Yes, I support this policy, strategy and action plan. I agree with Councillor Shepherd. As I was looking through the targets and things that are going to be done, some of them felt a little bit small, 100 people or whatever, and that perhaps comes back to the £5,000. So I think it would be good if this committee, when we're looking at next year's budget, i.e. 25-26, ask the team to come back with some proposals for what they could do were they to have more money, because it really is a very good strategy and a very important strategy. And I hear what we say about it being delivered around the council and other people being involved, but nevertheless, I would like to make sure that we are giving it the funding that it deserves. And I think when we get to next year's budget, that would be a good time to have a look at what more could be done if we put more money in.
Liz never says no to something like that. You'll see the head nodding furiously. Thank you very much. Does anybody, now, crikey, that was jolly close. So ladies first, I'm afraid. So it's very sexist. I shouldn't say that.
Okay, I was just going to suggest that for the avoidance of any possible doubt, we just rephrased the reference to the budget and said it was a specific additional budget or some such thing.
I'm not sure that that's, well, I'm not sure that's 100% necessary, because I think if it's, they're going to come back for more money next year.
No, I know. No, I know. Well, we understand it.
Yes.
But presumably these documents are available to the
Yes.
public, and it does look strange in isolation, I suppose.
Thoughts, Liz?
I'll leave the thought with officers. Okay.
Well, they can amend the policies. Again, if they want to tidy up the wording, then they can do, or change the wording. I think you can do.
Within the strategy, we don't refer to the budget. The
Right.
budget is only referred to under the financial part of the report.
Oh, right, okay.
Because that is the specific health and wellbeing budget allocated.
Yeah,
for
okay,
health and
perfect.
wellbeing.
So, thank you. So councillor Inskip, I believe you had your hand up.
Yes, so don't want to repeat what's already been said, because I think I welcome this strategy overall, but I do, and the action plan. I do have one concern, which follows on from the question that councillor Kane asked about parish councils being asked to sign a pledge, because the answer says the aim is for the strategy to be collaborative, which I absolutely would support. And clearly it's good that parish councils have a good understanding. But I do have a concern with the pledge. I'm also a chair of a parish council, but a larger parish council in my ward, but I have 3 smaller parish councils. And I know that, they really struggle at times. And I think the danger is they see signing a pledge as another burden on them rather than a collaborative way of working. So I think I think it's worth just reconsidering that and thinking if there's a better approach, because I think we obviously do not want to collaborate, but sometimes the pledges, particularly for those smaller parish councils, can more seem as a burden rather than a means to collaborate.
I think we're moving into, we're supposed to be in debate, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. So, but I think that maybe when the parish councils, if they have a query on that, Mark, then it's down to individual members to explain to them that it's not an onerous task. It's just, oh, sorry, Martin, do you want to a clarification?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to what you were saying.
Yeah.
So basically the idea behind that one was like linking in with the parish forum, speaking to the parish council in that environment. The pledge doesn't have to be huge. It's working with us and working with other partners in terms of that bottom-up approach. So we're not isolating people, not leaving them out of the conversations that we're having. So ensuring that we're getting right down to the bottom to the needs, to understand those needs in local patches and the rural isolations we know in terms of the district and how that supports it. So I think, yeah, the pledge in terms of that is we're not looking for huge pledges, we're just looking for support and working together in that collaborative approach.
Thank you, Martin. Does it, oh, councillor Vellacott.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, so I'm very glad to see a focus on that collaboration because, as Councillor Shepherd rightly says, there are some very significant ambitions in this plan and strategy, which I think is a good approach. But it's very clear that they're not deliverable just within ourselves. We have to work with local stakeholders and partners, and that's particularly relevant for my area because we are looking at the moment at a planning application for a new medical centre at Staplow, which will serve not just villages in my patch, but in all surrounding areas as well. And they need these organisations will need our support specifically to improve those services in Southern and beyond. So the collaborative method of working is appropriate. We've obviously discussed a little bit about the budget, so I won't repeat that. But indeed, I'm very pleased to support the strategy.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to contribute to the debate before we move to the vote? In which case then we are being asked to recommend to approve the draft health and wellbeing strategy and action plan. Can I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Martin and Liz. You can now go home. We now move to agenda item 13, which is just to note the minutes of the meeting at ARP on the 5th of March. We're happy to note that.
Chair.
Councillor Vellacott.
Thank you. So I just wanted to make members' attention to the internal audit plan approved by the audit committee last week, which includes the measures of anti-fraud which are being discussed on page 169 here, the £778,000 of fraud across the joint committee area. And that has been approved and is underlying the internal audit plan for the next municipal year.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vellacott, for that information. Unless anybody has anything further to say on that, are we happy to note, committee? Yes, perfectly. Then we're also noting the minutes of the waste review party held on Tuesday, the 6th of February. Does anybody have anything further to say? Oh, and the 8th of January, I beg your pardon, 2 meetings, 8th of January as well. Anybody have anything to say about that? Thank you very much. So we are noting those. Oh, sorry, councillor.
Yeah, I just wanted to express concern about the suggestion that parish councils should pay for extra dog bins. As to who's to decide what's extra isn't clear. But certainly the parishes I represent, it's often the smallest ones who have the largest quantity of public footpaths and public rights of way, and therefore the largest need for dog bins, which are largely servicing visitors to the parish rather than residents in the parish. So I would be very, very wary of us charging parish councils for extra dog bins.
Speaking as somebody who's on the Waste Working Party, these are not fully formed plans. These are just discussions as such, recommendations will be coming forward from the Working Party. They are nowhere near their conclusion at this stage, and you will have an opportunity to raise any concerns. As I say, these are just ideas at this stage, and it's not anything that is fully formed.
I know, I'm just trying to feed in before it does get fully formed.
You can't feed into a working party, Councillor Kane, I'm sorry. Well, you can via your own member of that working party. We're now moving on to agenda item 15, which is the forward action plan. We are next meeting on the 19th of June. I don't see anything terribly. 24th of June, I beg your pardon. No.
23.
23. Good Lord, I'm deranged this day. Here we go. Beg your pardon. Yes, 24th of June. I'd have been early, wouldn't I? Right. Okay. So we've got several things on there. And if anything further needs to come on, then we'll add that on to there as well, obviously.
Sorry, do we need to approve this subject to the inclusion of the reports of the strategies we talked about earlier, or
No,
does that?
It's not. It'll just be added onto the
Gotcha.
forward agenda plan
Thank
in
you.
years to come. I now need to ask everybody if they are happy for us to move into exempt session for the final agenda item, which is agenda item 16. And we will close the meeting at 6:20 and move into exempt session. Thank you very much indeed.